My name is Tristan, and for nearly all of my adult life, I have worked for my church. So for over 8 years, I have worked for my church, started off doing video, and now I oversee all of communications. And when you add it up, it's a long time. Nearly 30% of my life I have spent working for my church, right? Nearly all of my 20s has been spent working for a church. And so I have often asked myself this question, like, can I be a creative? Can I be creative while working for a church, within that church structure? And I've, throughout the years, asked myself that question because there's been a lot of times where I have questioned that for myself. And so I wanted to speak about that and share that with you, encourage you, give you some insight on how to think about it. Maybe you work for a church or you volunteer or serve. Every church is different, right? There's different denominations. Your context, part of the country, part of the world you live in, is going to be completely different from the context and the church that I'm a part of. But wanted to share some insight as someone who has spent basically my entire career, my entire 20s, working for a church. And yeah, I mean, I would say I am flourishing in my role. I am thriving in what I'm able to do, and I am finding creativity. So to answer the question off the bat, can you be a creative and work for a church? Yes, you can. But there are some things that need to be in place when it comes to the leadership, when it comes to your own self, and when it comes to kind of the structure or the model of the church, and really the church's willingness to change. That's a huge thing. So kind of wanted to get into all of that. The first aspect of being a creative in church is the leadership. So there are leaders, maybe depending on the church, it's elders or a leadership team, or it's one guy, one pastor. And as a creative, as someone who is either serving or working, they're the ones calling the shots, and you're kind of submitting to their authority, right? This is how it works in the business world, right? You got a boss. If you're working in that context, they're going to say, hey, this is where we're going. And then you might be able to interject and say, hey, creatively, we can do this. Or, hey, using my experience or expertise in marketing, video, graphic design, whatever your thing is, you get to speak into that. And so that's pretty cool. So it's really the same for church. But a lot of the time, church leaders, they don't want to try something new because there's pressure to either keep things the same or not to rock the boat too much. And a lot of the times in churches, unfortunately, people see artists as kind of pushing boundaries and pushing lines, right? And in a church context, it's like, hey, we have a mission, we have a vision for where we're going, and there are just less risks that people are willing to take creatively. Now, you may be in a context where that's not necessarily the case, but in my experience and having grown up around ministry, grown up in the church, that's been my experience. The main thing I want to say around leadership is that you have to approach it in a way where they know they can trust you, right? Maybe they're willing to say, hey, I'm going to take a chance on this person. They have some creative ideas. They have some strengths that they are bringing to the team. They're bringing to the church some creative ideas. Let's hear them out. But from my experience, I needed to be trusted in the little things before I was trusted in the bigger things. So in my role, I started off just making videos, and someone would tell me, hey, here's the video that you're going to make, and I would go make it, right? And as I got better in my role, as I developed my skills and continued in my role, then I was able to say, hey, what about this video? I was able to introduce ideas, and I would say, hey, I've done a video like this in the past. Let's do it again, but let's integrate this creative idea, right? Kind of pushing the boundary a little bit more, because they had seen the results, the successful results of what I had done in the past. They said, cool, Tristan knows how to do this. We're going to trust him with this thing, and it's going to be, it's going to have this other creative element that we've never done in our church, or whatever it is. I was able to say, hey, trust me in this. And because they had placed trust in me with the little things, I was able to grow in my role and be trusted more and more with the bigger things, right? And so, yeah, it's been a process, right? And even to this day, if I were just walk into my boss's room or the lead pastor's room and say, hey, I want to do this. And let's say it's like a crazy thing. It would cost like $50,000 or something. They're going to go, well, hold on, like, what is this going to do, right? So just because I have trust in the organization doesn't mean I can just do anything I want. No, there is, there has to be some reason behind it and some practicality to it. But if you're thinking about your own creative gifts and your own ability, think about how you have shown to leadership your ability to show up with the little things. You have integrated yourself into something that already exists. Maybe it's a ministry and they need some creative help, or they need something that only you can do. Maybe you're a musician. Hey, I'm going to help out with this small event and play a guitar or lead music or whatever it is. Then they might know, hey, there's this bigger event coming up and this person has shown that they can handle this event that already happened. Let's entrust them with this thing over here, right? Things like that are what I would encourage you to think about when it comes to leadership and your ability to be creative. Okay, so the second thing that I'll talk about is your own creativity and the ability to take risks, right? A lot of times we get in our own head as creatives and we think, okay, is this going to work out? Am I going to be able to take creative risks? Am I going to be able to do this? And a lot of the times we get in our own heads, like I said, and we don't trust ourselves to take a creative risk. So maybe the pastor of the church or the leader in the church that you're reporting to is saying, hey, yeah, go do this thing, right? But do you actually trust yourself to be able to execute and show up? A lot of the times when I've been faced with a big project in church, the way that I get through it and kind of keep myself from freaking out, especially if there's elements of that project, a lot of the times it was like videos, and there's elements of that video that I'd never done before. Well, I'd never actually filmed using this type of a drone, or I'd never actually used this kind of lighting, or I'd never done a gimbal on a location. We're really far away from everyone, right? Whatever it was, showing up and trying something new. I really had to trust myself and know, okay, take it one day at a time, take it one aspect of the project at a time. And that is how I was able to trust myself in the creative process. A lot of the times we freak ourselves out by the end goal. And we're constantly thinking about, okay, how do I achieve this creative end goal? When really, whenever you see something great on TV or, some project that costs a lot of money that creative people put a lot of time in, they're just showing up each day and they're going through the creative process. Ultimately, if you have a creative process, it's going to be pretty much the same no matter the scale of the project, right? That process is the same. So trust yourself to take risks. And it always helps to have a team around you. If you have people in the church that can support you or have other creative gifts, leaning on them. Often I've relied on people just for feedback. Hey, this is something I'm creating. What do you think? Or hey, this is the end goal, or I'm trying to reach this type of person. This is my audience. Do you think this speaks to them? I have a lot of help from staff and people who maybe they don't have the creative skill, but they have wisdom and insight to just be able to say, hey, this is my opinion, this is what I think, and that can be super valuable. The last thing that I would encourage you when you're considering whether you can serve in a church or be a creative within a specific ministry or church context is to understand that God wants you to lean into your creative gifts. He wants you to lean into the gifts and unique talents that He's given you. And oftentimes we are part of churches, or we're part of nonprofits, or these faith-based organizations that lean so heavily into man-made structure, right? So we lean into this man-made structure more than we lean into our creative gifts that God has given us. So often this looks like organizations that don't change, right? You've probably seen this before. If you grew up in church, there's someone who started a ministry 30 years ago, and it was to reach a specific group of people, or it was to do a specific thing. And 30 years go by, maybe that person is still leading the ministry, or at least the ministry is still going on, but it's not as effective as it was when it first started. It's not reaching its intended goal. And a lot of times as creatives, we see that and we like notice it right away, right? As creatives, we have this gift of noticing when things aren't working, when things aren't matching up and aligning, at least And in my mind, that's what I think of is I'm like, oh, you have this idea, but it's not landing. It's not reaching who you thought it's supposed to reach, or the goal isn't being met. And you might bring that up to leadership or bring that up to the person who's leading the ministry, and you say, hey, like, why are we doing this? And they're like, well, it's ministry. Why wouldn't we do this? We're serving God. We're doing this. We're being the church, whatever reason or wording they have behind that. They aren't seeing how their event or their ministry or the work that they're doing isn't matching up, right? And so it's a bummer because a lot of the times churches, they mean well. They're trying to be obedient, but they are using methods that don't actually reach the people that they're trying to reach. Or maybe they don't even know who they're trying to reach. They just go, well, like, it's the saying, like, if we build it, they will come, which isn't true anymore of church. That used to be how it was back 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's like if you had a church, you didn't need to advertise your church. If someone saw the church and it was the denomination they were part of, they're going to show up, right? And nowadays, we are relying on really marketing and digital tools and ways to invite people in. And it's a necessary thing as far as where we're at in the culture. And again, I'm speaking to my church culture, the city that I'm in, the context that I'm in, right? Think about the gifts that you have been given. Are you able to use those gifts in the church that you're a part of, or in the faith community that you are wanting to serve in or use those gifts in, right? And yeah, if there is a church who's not willing to change, they have all these ministries that aren't actually reaching people, or they're not willing to adopt new tools, like a lot of digital tools, social media, even things like AI, good use of AI tools that are helpful. If they're unwilling to do that, they're probably not going to be open to your creative ideas because they just want to do what they've always been doing. They like to stick to their tradition. But again, these are man-made traditions. God has given us freedom to reach people with new tools and new ideas. He's given us freedom to establish churches and create structures. And so these structures aren't bad or wrong or evil necessarily, but if they're ineffective or not allowing people to use their gifts, then they need to be getting rid of. They need to be replaced with something else. And so as a creative, I'm sure you often see that. You go, oh, wow, like I have a vision for how this could look, how this could be different. And so for me in my church context, I'm very thankful for the people who trust in me and, seeing how I've been faithful through these last over 8 years in ministry and know, hey, Tristan's going to show up. He's going to be using his gifts. He's actively seeking God with acquiring new skills and trying new things out, not trying to get stuck in a rut and try to do the same thing just because that's what we've been doing. But yeah, I have a lot of trust from leadership. I've also seen how when I show up and lean into my God-given gifts, the results happen. It may not always be perfect. I may try something and it kind of fails, or I need to go back and try another draft, try another revision of that creative idea. But ultimately knowing, hey, it's okay to show up and to fail, and that's okay as a creative. It's okay to have an abundance mindset around that, not a fear mindset, and to go, yeah, you're not always going to get it right, but to trust in the process and to show up. And again, if you are in a church structure that doesn't let you be creative because they're holding on to the past, or they're holding on to a man-made structure that doesn't allow people to use their gifts, then that can't be a place for you to use those gifts. And so maybe that means for you, you gotta go find a different church to be able to use your gifts. Maybe that just means you need to go find a way to use your gifts that's not in a church context, or it's in a different, maybe it's to go serve at a nonprofit and do creative work for them, a group or group of people that's doing work in your community that's not your church, right? So yeah, those would be my encouragements. I had this book up over here that I've been reading. It's just called Art+Faith by Makoto Fujimura. And don't ask me how it is because I'm only 2 or 3 chapters in. But I wanted to read this section because it just struck me. It just struck me and I feel like kind of fits with what we're talking about when it comes to creativity in the church. So here's what he said. He said, A concerned friend once advised me never to share in a church setting what I had just told him. Quote, God does not need us to fulfill God's need. God does not need us, end quote. There's a type of need to justify the existence of the institution of the church or any nonprofit organization to be useful to society and thereby useful to God. While the impetus is noble, we must start from the correct biblical understanding of God's self-sufficiency. God does not need any of our institutions to exist, period. But God's exuberant love invites us, broken vessels of God's choosing, to co-create into the new creation through Jesus. Got one more paragraph. God is all-sufficient, self-sufficient, and does not need creation either. Creation, including humanity, is a superfluous act of generosity in God's love. My friend's comment helped me see how the Christian church to this day has been undermined by the utilitarian mindset of the Industrial Revolution. We see our existence and value only in terms of fixing the world. The gospel of a creator who acts out of love, not necessity, liberates us from this bondage. Okay, so kind of a long quote there, but I love what that is speaking to, which is, like churches, a lot of the time we get, as a community, we get into this idea that like, oh, are we doing something useful? And if it's useful, then it's valuable. And a lot of the times we take our art and try to place it in the church in a way that says, well, this is useful. Or leadership might say to you, hey, this isn't very useful, and so it's not very valuable to us. It's not going to be used by God. And of course, that's completely wrong, right? We know that through the love of Jesus, we are liberated from that bondage, from that utilitarian mindset to go, no, I can create because I'm a creative, right? I've been made by the Creator to create. And that's all the excuse. That's all the thing you need behind that to create. Of course, when you're creating art in a church context, it's there to reach people, right? So there does have to be a justification. You can't, just laugh at the church leadership and say, you're wrong, you're dumb for not seeing it the way that I'm seeing it. But maybe that helps you make a decision, is knowing, okay, in my church context, unfortunately, I am not able to create using my gifts. And to me, again, I think that's the most important thing that I want to speak to in this specific thing. If you're asking that question, again, can I be a creative while being in the church? Can I serve in the church using my unique gifts? The answer is, are you able to use your gifts? And to me, if the answer is no, then you got to find an outlet somewhere else. Again, it doesn't mean leave the church. It doesn't mean put that church on blast or say they're wrong or they have it backwards. It just means you got to be able to express your gifts in another context. It's great as followers of Jesus to be able to express our gifts within a church of people who think similarly to us, but that isn't always the case. And everyone needs your art, right? Like I've been saying on this channel, we need you to be creative. We need you to create. The world needs you. God needs you to use your gifts. And so that is my encouragement for you to do that. And as you're thinking about church and kind of wrestling with that, be obedient with the gifts God has given you. And it's hard. You're always going to wrestle with this. I think when we get in close community, especially when it comes to our giftings and our art and our creativity, when you get close to people in community, like churches are, that can feel very uncomfortable. I know I've been pushed and I've been frustrated with people in the church who either don't see my gifts or they want to take something that I've made and turn it into something else. Say, hey, I don't like the way that this was represented. Let's change it. I need you to represent your art differently. That can be a challenge. And so as I've had a job, I've had to wrestle with that. Okay, how much of this is my job? How much of this is something God has called me to? How much of this is the leadership telling me that I need to do this? And where's that line? How do I play that? So it's always going to exist. It's never going to be perfect, but it is good. And I think God redeems a lot of the hardships of that when we're faithful to Him and we show up and we are using our gifts. Okay, thank you so much for kind of hearing me ramble. This is a bit of a longer video. I feel like I just had more to say in this video, but I really appreciate you just paying attention and hearing what I have to say from my experience and the things that God is teaching me. So yeah, love if you want to continue watching more videos, please subscribe. Also, you can read this video. You can read the transcript on Substack. In the description, I have a link to my Substack if you want to follow along with that. Have a good day.